The first thing anyone noticed about the ranch was how quiet it felt at dawn. The land stretched wide and patient, holding its breath as the sun rose slowly behind the hills. Cattle moved like shadows in the mist, and the wooden fence groaned softly as if it had stories it never finished telling. People said the rancher who owned this land was just as quiet, a man shaped by long days, hard work, and choices that kept him alone. No one guessed that a single act of kindness, given without thought of reward, was about to change the course of his life. He had built his routine on discipline. Wake before light, check the horses, walk the far fence line. Then sit with a cup of black coffee that had gone cold more times than he cared to count. His hands were rough, scarred from rope burns and weather, yet steady in everything he did. He believed a man earned his peace through labor, not through words. The ranch was not just his livelihood but his shield, a place where he could keep the past at a safe distance. The land itself carried weight. Every acre had been paid for with sweat and sacrifice. Storms had tested it, droughts had threatened it, and more than once he had wondered if the soil would ever forgive him for asking so much. Still he stayed. The rancher knew the shape of the hills, the way some men knew the faces of their children. He knew where the creek overflowed in spring and where the ground cracked under summer heat. What he did not know was how easily a stranger could step into this world and make it feel unfamiliar. That morning began like any other until he spotted movement near the edge of the road that cut past his property. At first, he thought it was an injured animal, tied his horse and walked closer, boots crunching on gravel. What he found instead was a woman standing beside a broken wagon, her hands gripping the wood as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. Dust clung to her skirt and worry sat heavy in her eyes. She looked out of place, not because she did not belong on the land, but because she carried a kind of fear he recognized. She did not ask for help right away. Pride held her back the same way it had held him back many times before. But when their eyes met, something shifted. He could see that she had traveled far, not just in miles, but in spirit. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was calm but tired. She said the wheel had cracked miles back and the nearest town was farther than she could walk before nightfall. Kindness was not something the rancher planned. It was something that happened when he stopped thinking and started acting. He hitched her wagon to his horse and led both back toward the ranch. She followed on foot, glancing around at the open fields, the barns, the quiet that seemed to wrap around everything. He noticed how she studied the land as if measuring it against something she carried inside. At the house, he offered water and a place to rest. He told himself it was temporary. Fix the wheel, send her on her way, return to the comfort of solitude. That was the sensible thing. Yet as she sat at the rough wooden table, warming her hands around a cup, he felt the air change. Her presence filled the space without demanding anything. She thanked him with a sincerity that caught him off guard. They spoke in careful sentences at first. She shared little, and he asked less. He learned she was traveling alone, that circumstances had left her with few choices and fewer allies. She did not speak of family, and he did not press. He understood the weight of silence, how it could protect wounds that were not ready to be seen. As the day stretched on, he worked on the wagon wheel while she helped where she could. Passing tools, holding boards steady, their movements fell into an easy rhythm. It surprised him how natural it felt to have someone there, how the ranch seemed less vast when shared. Every now and then he caught her watching him, not with curiosity, but with a quiet appreciation that made him shift uncomfortably. By evening, the wheel was repaired, but the sky had darkened with the promise of a coming storm. Clouds gathered low and the wind carried a warning through the grass. He told her it would not be safe to travel. The words came out firm, leaving little room for argument. She hesitated, then nodded. She accepted his offer to stay the night in the small guest room, though he noticed the way her shoulders tensed, as if she had learned not to trust shelter too easily. Dinner was simple, yet it felt like more than a meal. They shared bread, stew, and stories that hovered just shy of the truth. He spoke of the land of cattle and seasons. She spoke of roads and small towns, of work taken and left behind. Laughter slipped into their conversation without permission, surprising them both. It was soft, cautious, but real. Later, as rain began to fall against the roof, the rancher stood by the window, listening to the steady rhythm. He wondered when his world had started to feel different. He wondered why the idea of her leaving in the morning felt heavier than it should. This was not part of his plan. Kindness was meant to be brief, not something that rooted itself so quickly. In the quiet of the night, she lay awake in the guest room, staring at the ceiling. She told herself she would leave at first light. She had learned not to stay where she was not meant to be. Still, her thoughts kept drifting back to the man downstairs, to the steadiness in his voice and the way his eyes softened when he thought she was not looking. She had not expected safety to feel like this. Morning arrived with clear skies and cool air. The storm had passed, leaving the land washed clean. He saddled a horse, ready to escort her part of the way. She packed her few belongings slowly, as if each motion required decision. When she stepped outside, the sun caught her face, and for a moment neither of them spoke. He handed her the reins, his fingers brushing hers. The touch was brief, yet it lingered. Words gathered on his tongue, things he had not practiced saying. He wanted to tell her she could stay longer, that the ranch had room, that he was not as closed off as he appeared. But fear is quiet and convincing, and it told him not to hope. She mounted the horse, thanking him again for his help, for his kindness. There was something unsaid in her voice, something that made him look up sharply. Their eyes met, and the world seemed to pause between breaths. Just then, a distant sound broke the moment, the echo of hooves on the road, growing closer. She turned, tension flashing across her face, and he felt a sudden unease settle deep in his chest as he realized that whatever was approaching might change everything before either of them could speak. The sound of hooves grew louder, steady and purposeful, cutting through the calm of the morning. The rancher stepped forward without thinking, placing himself slightly between the woman and the road. His hand rested near his belt, not on any weapon, but ready all the same. Years on the land had taught him that trouble often announced itself long before it arrived. The riders came into view, two men on tired horses, their coats dusty and their faces drawn tight. They slowed when they saw the ranch gate, eyes scanning the property with open interest. One of them tipped his hat in a gesture that looked polite enough, though his gaze lingered too long. The woman shifted in the saddle, her fingers tightening on the reins. The rancher noticed the change in her posture, the way she held herself as if bracing for something she had seen before. The men asked simple questions. Had they seen a wagon pass through? Was there a woman traveling alone? Their voices carried an edge that did not match their words. The rancher answered carefully, saying little, keeping his tone even. The travelers pass now and then, nothing more. The men exchanged a look that felt heavy with meaning, then thanked him and rode on, though not before one of them glanced back, eyes sharp and searching. When they were gone, the silence returned, thicker than before. The woman let out a slow breath, and the rancher turned to her. He did not ask questions right away. He waited, giving her space, though curiosity burned beneath his calm. She met his gaze, and he could see a conflict playing across her face, fear wrestling with trust. She told him the men were not strangers to her. They had been following her for days, appearing at towns and crossroads, always asking the same questions. She did not know what they wanted, only that their interest felt dangerous. She said she had hoped the open road would be safer than staying in one place. Her voice remained steady, but her eyes betrayed the strain she carried. The rancher listened without interrupting, felt a familiar anger stir, the kind that rose when someone threatened what little peace he allowed himself. He offered to let her stay longer, not as a favor, but as a matter of sense. The land was wide, and the ranch was not easily watched. She hesitated, torn between caution and relief. In the end, she nodded, agreeing to remain for a few days until she could decide her next move. As the hours passed, life on the ranch resumed its steady rhythm, though everything felt slightly off balance. The rancher showed her the daily work, giving her tasks that matched her strength. She proved capable, learning quickly, her hands adapting to the tools as if she had always belonged there. He found himself watching her more than he should, noticing the quiet determination in the way she worked, the way she paused sometimes, as if listening for sounds only she could hear. In the afternoons when the sun hung high and the cattle settled, they found moments to talk. She shared fragments of her past, careful pieces that hinted at loss and resilience. She had worked in kitchens, cleaned houses, done whatever was needed to survive. There was mention of a family she no longer spoke of, and a promise she had once made that still guided her steps. She did not say what had broken that family, or why the promise weighed so heavily, and he did not push. He, in turn, spoke of the ranch, how it had come into his hands, and the years spent fighting to keep it alive. He spoke of storms that nearly took everything, of debts paid one coin at a time. He did not speak of the loneliness that settled in at night, or the memories that haunted him when the wind was right. Still, she seemed to sense them, offering understanding without asking for details. Despite the growing ease between them, tension lingered like a shadow at the edge of their days. Every distant sound drew her attention. Every rider passing on the far road made the rancher pause. He began riding the perimeter more often, checking fences, scanning the horizon. Kindness had brought her into his life, but responsibility now held her there. One evening, as the sky turned gold, she asked him why he had chosen to live so far from town. The question caught him off guard. He considered deflecting, offering a simple answer about land and work. Instead, he told her that solitude had felt safer once, that it had been easier to trust the earth than people. The admission surprised them both. She nodded, as if she understood that choice better than he expected. That night, the wind picked up again, carrying with it a sense of unease. The rancher lay awake, listening to the creak of the house and the distant lowing of cattle. He thought about the men on the road, about the way they had looked at his land. He wondered what kind of trouble followed her, and whether his decision to help had invited it onto his doorstep. The next day brought signs that confirmed his worry. Fresh tracks appeared near the outer fence, too close to be coincidence. He studied them carefully, jaw tightening. Someone had been watching. He said nothing to her at first, not wanting to alarm her without cause. But she noticed the change in him, the way his eyes scanned more often, the way his answers grew shorter. When he finally told her what he had found, she closed her eyes, as if she had expected it. She admitted there was more she had not shared. The men were not just curious travelers. They were tied to a dispute she had been caught in, something involving land and money that did not belong to her, yet somehow did. She had documents hidden among her belongings, papers she did not fully understand but knew were valuable. She had been told to deliver them, but the person meant to receive them never came. The rancher felt the weight of her words settle over him. He knew enough about such matters to understand how dangerous they could be. He asked why she had not left the papers behind, why she carried them at all. She answered honestly, saying she did not trust anyone else with them, because running felt like the only choice she had left. Days passed with a strange mix of normalcy and threat. They worked side by side, sharing meals, sharing glances that lingered longer than before. There were moments when laughter returned, when the tension eased, just enough to feel hope. In those moments, the rancher allowed himself to imagine what it might mean if she stayed. If kindness grew into something deeper, something lasting. But the land did not forget, and neither did those who hunted across it. One afternoon, a plume of dust rose on the far horizon, moving fast and direct. The rancher stood still, eyes fixed on it, heart pounding with a feeling he could not ignore. She joined him, following his gaze, and he felt her hand brush his arm, a silent question passing between them. Whatever was coming, it was no longer just her problem or his. It had become something they faced together, whether they were ready or not. And as the dust drew closer, carrying with it the promise of confrontation, neither of them knew if the kindness that had brought them here would be enough to protect what was beginning to grow between them. The dust cloud on the horizon grew thicker as the minutes passed, its slow approach pressing on both of them like a held breath. The rancher did not move at first. He studied the land, measuring distance and direction, reading the signs the way he always had. Whoever was coming knew exactly where they were headed. This was not a rider lost on the road. He told her to go inside and stay there. His voice was calm, but it carried an edge she had not heard before. She did as he asked, though she paused at the door, watching him saddle his horse with practiced speed. The ease of his movements hid the tension running beneath them. When he finally rode out toward the fence line, she felt the weight of waiting settle heavily on her chest. From the porch, she could see him stop at the far end of the field, standing tall in the saddle, a solitary figure against the open land. The riders appeared soon after, 3 this time, their pace confident. She recognized 2 of them from before. The third rode slightly ahead, posture stiff, eyes fixed on the rancher, as if this encounter had been planned for some time. The men spoke first, their words lost to the distance, but their tone was clear enough. The rancher listened, responding in short sentences. He did not step aside, did not invite them closer. When one of the riders gestured toward the house, the rancher shook his head. The exchange grew tense, shoulders squaring, horses shifting restlessly beneath them. Inside, she felt useless. Her past had followed her here no matter how far she ran. She thought of the documents hidden in her bag, the papers that had become a burden heavier than any possession she owned. She had never wanted to be responsible for them. They had been pressed into her hands by someone desperate, someone who had trusted her with more than she understood. Now that trust threatened to destroy the only safe place she had found. After what felt like hours, the riders turned back, retreating the way they came. The rancher remained where he was until they disappeared beyond the rise. Only then did he ride back, his expression unreadable. When he dismounted, she saw the tension in his jaw, the way his hands flexed, as if holding on to control. They spoke quietly inside, away from open windows and listening ears. He told her the men claimed to be searching for stolen property. They said the papers she carried belonged to someone powerful, someone who did not appreciate delays or excuses. The rancher had told them she was not there. It was a lie he had chosen without hesitation. She apologized, the word feeling small compared to the trouble she had brought. He waved it off, saying blame did not solve anything. What mattered was what came next. The rancher suggested moving the documents somewhere safer, perhaps hiding them until they could decide what to do. She agreed, though fear gnawed at her. Every choice felt like a risk. As days passed, the ranch became a place of watchful stillness. The rancher adjusted his routines, keeping horses ready, supplies stocked. He spoke to neighboring landowners when he could, careful not to reveal too much, only enough to ensure extra eyes on the roads. Some listened with concern, others with caution. Trouble had a way of spreading, and not everyone wanted to be caught in its path. The woman noticed how the strain changed him. He slept less, worked harder. The lines on his face deepened, and his silences grew longer. She tried to lighten the mood when she could, offering small kindnesses in return, cooking meals that reminded her of better times, mending clothes without being asked. Their closeness grew in these quiet acts, unspoken and fragile. At night, they sometimes sat on the porch, listening to the land settle. She spoke of the promise that had guided her for so long, the one that had led her to accept the documents in the first place. It had been made to someone she trusted deeply, someone who believed in fairness even when the world did not. That belief had cost them dearly. She carried it now, unsure whether it was worth the danger it brought. He shared more of himself as well, opening doors he had kept shut for years. He spoke of loss that had driven him inward, of choices made out of fear rather than hope. Helping her had stirred something he thought long gone, desire to protect not just land, but a future that included someone else. Still, the threat did not fade. Riders appeared again, sometimes stopping at the edge of the property, sometimes watching from afar. Once she found tracks near the barn that did not belong to any of their horses. Another time a gate was left open, cattle scattered in a way that felt deliberate. Each incident tightened the tension, turning the ranch into a place balanced between safety and siege. A new complication arose when word reached them of a meeting planned in the nearest town. The men searching for the documents were said to be offering rewards, asking questions that hinted at force if cooperation failed. The rancher considered going himself, gathering information, but the risk was high. Leaving the ranch even for a day could invite trouble. She suggested she go instead, arguing that she was the reason for the danger. He refused immediately. The argument that followed was quiet but intense, each of them trying to protect the other in their own way. In the end, they agreed on a compromise. A trusted hand from a nearby ranch would go in their place, listening and reporting back. While they waited, the bond between them grew heavier with unspoken feelings. Kindness had turned into reliance, and reliance into something more dangerous, something that made the stakes feel personal. They were no longer just guarding documents or land. They were guarding each other. The report from town confirmed their fears. The men were growing impatient. They believed the papers were close, and they were willing to search every property if needed. The law, such as it was, seemed uninterested or unwilling to interfere. Power favored those with money and influence, not a quiet rancher and a woman on the run. As dusk fell that evening, the rancher made a decision he had been avoiding. He told her they might need to move the documents off the property, perhaps even send her away for a time. The idea hurt more than he expected. She listened, eyes dark with understanding, yet the thought of leaving filled her with dread. Running again felt unbearable, especially now. Before either of them could say more, a sound echoed from the distance, sharp and unmistakable. Horses were approaching fast, not bothering to hide. The rancher stood, hand tightening into a fist, while she felt her heart race. Whatever came next would test everything they had built so far, and neither of them knew whether their growing connection would be their strength or their undoing. The sound of approaching horses cut through the evening like a warning bell. The rancher moved first, his body reacting before his thoughts could catch up. He guided her inside, closing the door gently but firmly, then stepped back out onto the porch. The sky was darkening fast, clouds pressing low, as if the land itself sensed what was coming. Dust rose again from the road, thicker this time, closer. She stood just inside the doorway, heart pounding, listening to every sound. The rancher's boots thudded across the porch as he checked the rifle resting by the wall, not lifting it, only making sure it was there. He had hoped it would never come to this. Kindness was never meant to turn into a stand against danger, yet here they were. The riders appeared in full view now, 5 of them, spreading out as they slowed near the gate. Their formation was not accidental. They knew how to surround, how to apply pressure without rushing. The rancher felt a chill despite the warm air. These were not men looking to ask questions anymore. They were here to take something. One rider pushed ahead, stopping just short of the fence. His voice carried easily across the land, confident and sharp. He spoke of patience worn thin, of business unfinished. He said they knew the woman was there. He said it would be easier if the rancher stepped aside. The rancher answered with steady calm, telling them they were on private land and should turn back. His tone carried no fear, only resolve. He had stood his ground against storms and loss before. This was no different, he told himself, even as his pulse raced. Inside, she pressed her hands together, fighting the urge to run. She thought of the documents hidden beneath loose floorboards in the storage room, wrapped carefully to protect them from moisture and eyes. Those papers had brought all of this to the rancher's door. She wondered if giving them up would end the threat, or only invite more harm. The lead rider laughed, a sound without warmth. He spoke of law and ownership, twisting words until they meant whatever suited him. He hinted at consequences, at how quickly things could turn ugly in places so far from help. The other riders watched in silence, hands loose at their sides, ready. The rancher felt anger rise, slow and dangerous. He had given his life to this land, kept it honest and open. He would not have it turned into a bargaining chip. He told the rider again to leave, his voice firmer now. The silence that followed stretched tight. One of the men dismounted, taking a step forward. The horses shifted, sensing tension. From the doorway, she could see everything, could feel the moment slipping toward something irreversible. She stepped out despite his earlier warning, her presence drawing all eyes. She stood beside him, shoulders squared, fear blazing in her chest, but not showing on her face. She spoke before he could stop her, saying the dispute was hers, not his. She said the documents they wanted were tied to wrongdoing, that she would not hand them over to be buried or misused. Her voice shook only once, then steadied. The men reacted with surprise, then irritation. The lead rider warned her she did not understand the forces she was challenging. He promised protection if she cooperated, trouble if she did not. The rancher glanced at her, seeing the courage it took for her to stand there. He felt a surge of something fierce and protective. Night settled in fully, shadows stretching long across the yard. The tension thickened with the dark. A distant rumble of thunder rolled across the hills, echoing the unease twisting through them all. The rancher realized time was their enemy. Every moment gave the riders more confidence, more opportunity. He suggested they talk inside, hoping to gain control of the situation. The men refused, insisting on resolution here and now. One rider circled slowly, eyes scanning the buildings, the fences, the land. The rancher recognized the look of someone assessing value and weakness. She leaned closer to him, her voice low. She asked if he trusted her. He did not hesitate before answering yes. That single word carried more weight than any promise. She told him there was something she had not shared, a detail about the documents that could change everything. Before she could say more, a sharp crack split the air. A shot rang out, not aimed at anyone, but close enough to send a clear message. The horses reared, snorting, and the rancher instinctively stepped in front of her. His heart hammered as he realized how quickly control was slipping away, but the riders were done pretending. Chaos hovered just beneath the surface. Neighbors might hear the shot, or they might not. Law might come, or it might stay distant. The rancher weighed his options, each one heavy with risk. Could stall, negotiate, or force the issue. None promised safety. Rain began to fall, sudden and hard, turning dust into mud. The storm mirrored the moment, loud and relentless. Water streaked down faces, blurred outlines, voices raised to be heard over the downpour. The lead rider shouted, demands his patience gone. In the confusion, she made a decision of her own. She stepped forward again, raising her hands to show she carried nothing. She told them the documents were hidden, protected by someone else, and that harming anyone there would only ensure they never found them. It was a gamble, one that made the rancher's breath catch. The men hesitated, glancing at one another. Doubt crept in, thin but visible. The lead rider accused her of lying, yet his certainty wavered. The storm intensified, thunder cracking overhead, lightning flashing across the sky, and briefly illuminating every tense face. The rancher felt the moment tipping, balanced on the edge of violence or retreat. He could sense that one wrong move would shatter everything. His thoughts raced, not just for his land, but for her, for the fragile future that had begun to form between them in the quiet spaces of shared work and unspoken care. A sudden sound from the far side of the property broke through the chaos. Another set of hooves, more than one, approaching fast. The rancher's heart leaped as he realized they were not alone anymore. He did not know if it was help or more trouble, only that the situation was about to change. All eyes turned toward the noise, tension peaking as rain poured down and thunder rolled once more. The riders tightened their formation, uncertain now, while she stood frozen between fear and hope. The rancher clenched his fists, ready for whatever came next, knowing that the choices made in the next few moments would decide far more than ownership or documents. They would decide whether kindness could survive in a world closing in from all sides. The approaching hooves grew louder, cutting through the storm with sharp urgency. The rancher strained to see through the rain as dark shapes emerged along the far fence line.
Yes.
These riders moved differently.
Yes.
They did not spread out or slow with caution. They rode straight toward the house, determined and fast.
Yes.
For a brief moment, no one spoke. Even the men who had come to threaten fell quiet, uncertainty flickering across their faces. The newcomers drew closer, and the rancher recognized one of them. It was a neighboring landowner, a man known for keeping his word and his distance from trouble. Behind him rode to others, men who worked nearby ranches and knew the land as well as anyone. Relief tried to rise in the rancher's chest, but he held it down. Help could shift the balance, or it could make things worse. The lead rider from the threatening group turned his horse sharply, calling out over the rain. He demanded to know what business they had there. The neighbor answered calmly, saying he had heard a shot and saw riders gathering where they did not belong. His tone carried authority born from years of standing his ground. He did not accuse, only observed, and that seemed to unsettle the situation more than anger would have. The rancher stayed silent, watching closely. The woman stood near him, rain soaking her hair and clothes, yet she did not move away. Her presence felt like a quiet statement of loyalty, one that tightened something deep in his chest. He wondered if she understood how much danger she was in, or if courage had simply taken over. Words were exchanged, sharp and clipped. The threatening riders argued their claim again, insisting they were within their rights. The neighbor listened, then said rights did not include intimidation or gunfire on someone else's land. He mentioned witnesses, nearby families, and how quickly stories traveled in places like this. His words carried weight, and the storm seemed to pause, waiting. Still, the tension refused to break. The lead rider's pride would not allow an easy retreat. He shifted tactics, turning his attention back to the woman. He accused her of theft, of hiding behind honest men, said she would not find protection everywhere she ran. The accusation struck hard, and she felt her resolve tremble. She spoke again, louder this time, telling them she had never taken what was not hers. She said she had been given responsibility, not stolen property. Her voice cut through the rain, raw and determined. For a moment, the land felt very small, every fence post and tree leaning in to listen. The rancher watched her with a mix of fear and admiration. He wanted to pull her back inside, to shield her from every word and threat. Instead, he stood firm beside her. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. Kindness had led them here, but choice kept them standing side by side. Lightning flashed, illuminating the riders' faces. Doubt crept deeper into the threatening group. They had not expected resistance backed by others. The lead rider glanced at his men, then at the neighbors. He realized force would not go unnoticed now. Still, he was not ready to walk away empty-handed. He made one final demand. He said they would return at first light, with proof and authority, and that if the documents were not handed over, there would be consequences. It was not a promise spoken lightly. It was a warning meant to linger long after they left. With that, he turned his horse, signaling the others to follow. They rode off into the rain, their retreat slow and deliberate, meant to show they were not defeated. The sound of their hooves faded, but the threat they carried stayed behind like a stain on the ground. The neighbors remained until the road was empty again. They dismounted, faces tight with concern. Questions followed, careful and quiet. The ranchers shared only what was necessary, enough to explain the danger without exposing too much. The neighbors listened, nodding, understanding the unspoken code of trust that bound people like them together. They promised to keep watch, to spread word carefully, and to return if needed. Before leaving, the neighbor looked at the woman, his expression softening. He told her she was not alone, even if it felt that way. The words nearly broke her composure. When the ranch finally stood quiet again, the storm eased into a steady rain. The rancher led her inside, closing the door against the night. The house felt different now, charged with what had almost happened and what still might. They stood in the small kitchen, dripping water onto the floor, neither speaking. She broke the silence first, her voice barely above a whisper. She told him the details she had tried to share earlier. The documents were not just proof of ownership or money. They contained names, agreements, and evidence that could expose powerful people. If made public, they could change lives, maybe even bring justice. If hidden or destroyed, the truth would vanish with them. The rancher felt the weight of her words settle heavily. He understood now why the men were so determined, why threats came so easily. This was bigger than land. It's bigger than either of them. He asked her what she planned to do with the documents if she ever reached safety. She admitted she did not know anymore. The road had led her here, and now every direction felt dangerous. They sat at the table, sharing a pot of coffee gone cold, exhaustion pulling at them both. The closeness between them felt different now, edged with urgency and fear. The rancher realized that caring for her meant risking everything he had built. Letting her go might protect the ranch, but it would leave a hollow he was not sure he could endure. Outside, the rain slowed, leaving the land washed and quiet. Inside, neither of them slept. The night stretched on, filled with thoughts of dawn and what it would bring. The warning echoed in their minds, heavy and unresolved. As the first hint of light touched the horizon, the rancher stood and looked out the window. Somewhere beyond the hills, plans were already forming against them. He did not know how the next day would unfold, only that it would demand courage beyond anything he had known. Behind him, she watched his silhouette against the rising light, feeling the same fear and hope twist together inside her. Whatever happened when the sun fully rose, their lives would not return to what they had been before. And as the quiet before dawn held its breath, the coming clash felt closer than ever, waiting just beyond the edge of the morning.